Do you know what can be really frustrating about being a Spanish learner? Not being able to understand Spanish TV and movies without subtitles. We try to do our best, right, but we could be watching a movie or a TV show for 10 or 20 minutes straight and listening very closely and still not understand anything. One reason why you may not be able to understand Spanish TV and movies without subtitles is because you lack knowledge of Spanish pronunciation. For example, let's say that you have been studying vocabulary for weeks upon weeks and now you know the definitions of 500 words. This is really great. However, if you don't know how Spanish words should sound, then it's going to be very difficult for you to actually pick these words out when you are watching a Spanish movie or a TV show. I just realized that the video may look kind of weird because my chair just kept going down and down. But anyway, at this point, you may just be guessing at all the words that you are hearing because, again, you just don't know how anything is supposed to sound. So what do we do to fix this? We are going to learn the basics of Spanish pronunciation by understanding what are the rules of Spanish pronunciation. So we can start with how do the letters of the Spanish alphabet sound? How do different accent marks over different letters affect the way that we say these letters? We can also learn many patterns of pronunciation. So for example, some words end in ION with an accent mark over the O. So we have words like transportación or transportation in Spanish and representación, explicación. We also have words that end with ia or ia with an accent mark over the I or the I. So we have dia and mia, sandia. We also have the single R versus the double R. So we have carro versus caro and pesado versus pasado. So E's and A's in Spanish usually get me mixed up a lot. But as you can see here, it makes a big difference because those are two different words. When you are learning these pronunciation rules, make sure that you speak aloud and you are saying these words like I was just doing right there. Dia, transportación, sandia. And that's going to help you to be able to pick out these words when you are hearing these actors say them. Also, make sure that you are listening to native content in Spanish. And not listening to native content in Spanish is another reason why you are not able to understand Spanish movies and TV shows without subtitles. Let's say during your Spanish learning journey so far, you have only been having lessons with a Spanish teacher, or you have only been watching YouTube videos that were created by Spanish teachers, or listening to content from a Spanish course. The moment you throw on a telenovela or a Spanish movie, you think to yourself, oh wow, these Spanish speakers speak way too fast. But in reality, they don't speak too fast. You are just not used to hearing how Spanish speakers speak naturally. Many Spanish teachers are creating content for non-native Spanish speakers that are trying to learn the Spanish language. So this may mean that they are mixing English and Spanish when they are speaking. They are speaking Spanish slower than they would if they were speaking Spanish with their friends or family. When they're speaking Spanish, they are not using a lot of slang from their country, but they may be speaking more formally. They could be speaking Spanish with more of a neutral accent. On the other hand, Spanish TV and movies are created specifically for native Spanish speakers, so they're going to be doing less of these things that a Spanish teacher would be doing. So how do we fix this? If you are taking Spanish lessons with a tutor, then you could ask your tutor to speak to you as if you were not a Spanish student and if you were, or as if you were one of their friends or one of their family members. Start listening to the radio in Spanish, music in Spanish, and podcasts, and a lot of Spanish TV and movies. And the more that you consume all this native content, it's going to become so much easier to be able to watch Spanish TV and movies without subtitles. Sometimes you aren't able to understand Spanish TV and movies because you don't have a lot of knowledge of cultural references and jokes. For example, I grew up in the United States here, right? So throughout my life, I have watched a lot of movies and watched a lot of TV shows here. So I have a decent amount of knowledge of jokes and cultural references. But I have over 20 years of watching so many of these movies and TV shows. So I've been exposed to plenty of these cultural references and jokes, right? And I've been realizing as I get older and I have more experiences in life that I actually start to understand more of cultural references and jokes because as a kid, I might have heard them right, but then as an adult, they actually make a lot more sense. Now, on the other hand, as a Spanish learner, just imagine how long it would take for me to start to understand cultural references and jokes that are used in different Spanish-speaking countries, especially when I already have to learn a lot of other things about the Spanish language, like grammar and pronunciation. How do we fix this? Listen and watch a lot of native content in Spanish because that is the answer to everything. But seriously, yes, that really is the answer because you just have to listen to a ton of native content and also read it as well. So when I say native content, that could be reading comments online from native Spanish speakers. Because again, a lot of Spanish speakers, or I guess any speaker in the world, likes to tell jokes. So if you're reading comments online, more than likely they are going to be telling jokes. And if they are telling jokes, they could be referencing some movie or TV show. And then of course, I also highly recommend that you actually have conversations with native Spanish speakers because kind of the same thing there. They're probably going to be using a lot of cultural references as well when they are speaking. They're going to be saying a lot of jokes. And in my case, when I'm having conversations with my Spanish-speaking friends, a lot of jokes that I do not understand. But that is the beauty of having conversations with native Spanish speakers. You can ask them what they are talking about. So many times if my friend tells me a joke, they will tell me that, oh, it's from this movie or it's from this TV show, things like that. I also recommend having a notebook handy when you are reading comments online in Spanish and when you're watching movies and TV shows in Spanish as well, so you can take a lot of notes. For example, there is this show called Teresa, and there is one phrase that is very popular that she says, which is entre ser y no ser, yo soy. I'm not gonna lie, I still have no idea what this phrase actually means, but at the very least, I know what TV show that it is from. And this show specifically is quoted a lot, or there are many scenes from this show that are quoted a lot online. There are many memes about this show, and I'm sure that if I were to say this phrase to a Spanish speaker or to one of my Spanish speaking friends, if they know about this show, I mean, it is quite popular, maybe they would start laughing, or at the very least, we would start to have a conversation about this show or about other shows that I know and just a whole bunch of other quotes because they're funny. If you didn't know yet, there are many different accents and dialects in Spanish. So just because you can finally understand Mexican movies and TV shows doesn't really mean that you're going to be able to understand movies and TV shows from another Spanish-speaking country, because the Spanish can be very, very different. If I'm watching a Mexican movie or a TV show, I may hear things like pedo or peda or híjole or a su madre, chingón, chingona, güey, vato, órale, desmadre, pinche. But if I'm watching a Dominican movie or a TV show, I may hear things like vaina, chercha, jepeta, suéltame en banda, estoy en olla, heavy, pana, me da un pique, diablo. The Spanish spoken in these countries are very different, at least to me. So it wouldn't be a very easy switch just from Mexican movies and TV shows to Dominican movies and TV shows. So how do we fix this? Well, of course, we're going to have to listen to a lot of native content again in Spanish, but for that particular Spanish-speaking country. So if I am more familiar with Mexican Spanish, then I'm going to listen to a lot more content that comes from the Dominican Republic or Colombia or from Argentina or from España. Then I would also make sure that I'm taking a lot of notes as well. So I'm writing down all these slang words and all these phrases that are specific to the country. And then getting your ears adapted to the actual accent, that's a whole art in itself. And I do talk about that in some other videos. I'll link those down below. And this is not a fast process by any means, but it will take a lot of patience and a lot of time and dedication. I would also recommend just having conversations as well with native Spanish speakers from different Spanish-speaking countries. So again, you get used to the way that they speak Spanish. I remember one time when I was at the gym and I heard this group speaking Spanish, but I had no idea where they were from. So I asked them and they told me that they were from Cuba. And to my surprise, basically that whole conversation, I couldn't understand 90% or probably more than that of what they were saying to me because I never had any exposure to Cuban Spanish before. So kind of the same thing here. I can't just, watch like a Cuban movie or a Cuban TV show for one day and then expect to understand Cubans perfectly. But it could take many, many, many months before I can actually increase my listening comprehension skills here to be able to understand Cubans better. Sometimes when you're watching Spanish TV and movies, it actually has nothing to do with your listening comprehension skills. But sometimes the audio is just so bad. Or maybe it's not really bad, but it's just so low, I suppose. I know there are some movies and TV shows that I've watched recently where I had to put the volume up so high just to be able to pick out what the words that they are saying. Or sometimes even when I had the subtitles on and I put the volume all the way up, I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't think they said that word. In this case, there is no real fix because you can't change how the movie or TV show was produced, right? So you may just have to change the movie or TV show. Let me know in the comment section below, why do you think you can't understand Spanish TV and movies without subtitles? As well, if you like this video, make sure that you give it a thumbs up and you share it with your language learning friends. Now watch this next video if you want to learn more about my Spanish learning journey.